Hi everyone, my name is Keely Miriam. Welcome to my channel, and today I'm filming a reading vlog. So I first of all just want to discuss the books that I'm currently reading and what I plan to read over the duration of like the next week or so. It's really only just like 2 books. So the first book is the book that I'm currently reading, which is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. If you're not familiar with it, this is the first book of the Stormlight Archive series, and it's quite a long book. It's about 1,200 pages long, and I'm only about halfway through it. So for that reason, I think I'm just going to take a short break from this book, and I'm going to focus on another book for maybe the next week or so, and then I'll jump right back into this one after. I find because of the length of this book, I'm not really reaching for it as often, although I'm really interested in where the story's going and I really enjoyed reading it so far. I'm not really as likely to pick it up because it's so long and I know it's going to take me so long to get through this book. So I've kind of been procrastinating this book a little bit, which is why I want to focus on something else for a little bit, and then maybe I'll be more likely to pick this one up after. So the book that I'm reading for this reading vlog is called The Beekeeper of Aleppo, and so this book basically follows a family of Syrian refugees as they make their way from Syria to England. And so from what I gather, the wife is blind and the couple lost their son. This definitely isn't going to be an easy read. It's going to be very heartbreaking, very difficult. I tend to not do well with heartbreaking and sad books, but I'm really hoping to get through this one. This one's been on my TBR for a while. Yeah, I'm very interested to read this. So my plan basically is that if this book gets a little bit too difficult to read, I'm going to pick up The Way of Kings then, as kind of like escapism, like a fantasy. So yeah, that's the plan for this vlog, that I'm going to focus on The Beekeeper of Aleppo. That's going to be my primary task, and I'll update you with the reading of this one for sure. But if I end up reading The Way of Kings, I'll let you know. I'll give you an update if I have anything to update you with. So right now I'm just doing a little update on my progress so far on The Beekeeper of Aleppo. So I'm almost halfway through. Currently, we're just kind of switching back between the present timeline and the past. So the past is set in when they're in Syria and their journey to England. And then the present is set like when they're in England and they're trying to figure out whether or not they'll be able to stay, and they're meeting with like a social worker, and they're staying at like this bed and breakfast, which is full of basically just refugees from different places. I am so far enjoying it. It is sad, but it's not quite as sad as I thought it would be. I think it will get worse though, because there were some very important plot points that were left out. Like, we know that the son died, but we don't know how that happened, and we also know that the wife was able to see before, but now she's blind at the moment. So we don't really know why that happened, and I'm sure they'll probably explain that eventually, but they kind of just like skipped over that and they got right to when they're in England. It's been kind of a quick read. I find that I'm getting through this very quick. It could just be because it's such a short book. It's only like 300 pages. So compared to the last book that I was reading, which is like 1,200 pages, this is a lot quicker to get through. I expected this book to be a lot slower to get through just because of the sensitive subject matter, but it's actually surprisingly a lot quicker. It could just be because I'm interested in the story, like where the story's going, what happened to the characters, what's going to happen in the future, if they'll be able to stay in England or not. That's kind of like the big plot point right now. There's not a whole lot of stories that are centered around refugees and their trauma and the struggles that they go through to get to where they are and to be able to stay in the country that they're in. So I'm really liking having this different perspective than what I'm used to in stories. And so I'm not sure if I'm going to give any other updates until the very end of this book. I'm thinking I'll probably finish this within the next couple of days just because it is reading so quickly. So I'm probably going to do some reading tonight and then I'll update you probably either tomorrow or the day after.
3 days later.
Hi everyone, so I don't have any reading updates for you at the moment. I did finish The Beekeeper of Aleppo though. I will let you know in the next clip because I'm going to take some time just to kind of collect my thoughts on the book and then come up with something maybe a little bit more coherent. I can say though that I really did like the book. That's all that I'm going to say about the book for now, and I'll let you know in the next clip a little bit more about that. So tonight I just kind of had a really chill, like comfy evening. I took some time to crochet, which I haven't done in probably months. I crocheted some bookish things. I crocheted a couple of bookmarks. And I also watched a Turkish series at the same time. I just started it. I'm on episode 2. There's like 100 and some episodes, so I don't know how far I'm gonna get into this one. It's called Early Bird. That's the English name for it. I'm not sure of the Turkish name for it. This series seems to be very like romance heavy. I'm not usually a big fan of romance. However, I find in Turkish series they're often very like slow burn, like very slow burn. And so I'm kind of okay with that. I'll see how this one goes. If I don't like this one, I have so many others on my list that I'm really hoping to get to soon, so I can try out one of those ones if this one doesn't work out. So I'm just gonna show you guys what I crocheted. Like I said, they're just bookmarks. They didn't turn out perfectly, but that's okay. I think this one here is supposed to kind of look like it has like a daisy pattern on it. I kind of ruined what was supposed to be a tassel. The other one that I made is this little heart one. So the opposite end of this was supposed to be a heart. It did not turn out that way, but that's okay. I kind of like the other, like the big heart on it. So those are some useful things that I crocheted, I guess. It was nice to just get to sit down and focus on some hobbies. I haven't been able to crochet in a while, so it was nice just to make even like something small for now. So I just wanted to quickly discuss some bookish related news that I'm personally very excited about as a Junji Ito fan, and I'm sure all other fans are very excited. He recently announced that he's going to be doing a horror anthology with Netflix. If you don't know who Junji Ito is, he is a horror manga artist. He does a lot of very like absurd, surrealist kind of work. It is very dark and very graphic though. I've actually only read 2 of his works before and I have to get caught up before this comes out. The ones that I've read are Tomie and Fragments of Horror, which was like a short story collection. I really want to read, I think it's called Uzumaki. I'm not sure how you say it, but I want to read that one next. Yeah, so I have a lot of catching up to do before that series comes out on Netflix. Anyways, circling back to what I'm currently reading. I mentioned at the beginning of this vlog that I'm reading The Way of Kings currently, and I think I'm going to start reading that again. I'm really in like a fantasy mood, so I'm gonna start reading that. Yeah, I'll let you guys know my thoughts on that one in the next clip as well. That's all I really had to say for now. I will see you guys in the next clip. Hi everyone, so I'm just filming my final thoughts on all the books that I read this week, which was The Beekeeper of Aleppo, and I read some of The Way of Kings, but I didn't finish it all. So I'm just going to begin by discussing The Beekeeper of Aleppo. So The Beekeeper of Aleppo was honestly an amazing book. I thought it was so well written. It wasn't super like poetic or like flowery, which is okay. Sometimes I like that in a book, but I think for this book it was really good that it wasn't that way, if that makes sense. Just to really highlight the story rather than the writing. I think overall my rating of The Beekeeper of Aleppo was like 4.5 stars. I know in my last update I said that I thought they would come back to how the boy died and how the wife was blinded, and so they did actually end up doing that. I was correct on that. I'm obviously not going to say how that happened because of spoilers. It was brought up in a way that I didn't really expect. So it kind of just came out of nowhere. I didn't expect them to talk about it in that instance. The really traumatic things weren't like discussed in details, which I personally am glad about. It was still very heartbreaking. It didn't make it any less heartbreaking. They didn't go into them in like so much detail. They didn't take like pages and pages to go over something. Sometimes they would only take like half a page to discuss like a really traumatic event that happened to this family on their journey. I think another interesting sort of theme that was discussed in the book was how their trauma caused this couple's relationship to sort of change. Like the dynamics of their relationship sort of changed because they themselves, due to this trauma, kind of changed a little bit in a way. Their trauma actually manifests in like very different ways, and that's something that we see throughout the book, but especially near the end. I'm not going to talk about how their trauma kind of comes out. I'm not going to discuss that because that is spoilery. So there was sort of like a bit of a plot twist, but I don't know if I would have called it a plot twist because I feel like it was very obvious. Like it was almost too obvious to call it a plot twist. Like I think it was something that we were supposed to kind of figure out. Like we were supposed to know this pretty early on in the book. So it wasn't necessarily a bad thing that I figured out this sort of like twist, because I didn't really know what was going to happen after this, what was going to be the result of this. So I think the author did a really good job of discussing the dangerous situations that refugees are often in. So for example, like you often hear the horrible conditions of like refugee camps. They're often just subject to very harsh conditions in these places. Obviously, I can't attest to anything in this. I've never been in that situation of having to be a refugee. I'm not the person to criticize whether this is an accurate portrayal of being a refugee, but I know the author herself has some experience with refugees. She has worked with refugees, and I believe her parents were also refugees. So she does have a little bit of experience there, although she wasn't a refugee herself. Yeah, overall, I did really enjoy the book. Probably one of my favorite books so far this year, honestly. So I did also read some of The Way of Kings this week. Didn't finish it yet. I still have, I think, about 500 pages left. Hoping to finish that either by the end of this month or maybe like the middle of next month. I feel like the first book of the Stormlight Archive series is really just a lot of understanding the characters, getting to know them and their backstory, and getting to know like the world, being introduced to the world building. I think that's most of what the first book is, because I'm over halfway through and we haven't really gotten to figure out like what's actually happening right now. I think what's going to happen, which is pretty much typical of fantasy, is that all of the characters that we're getting these different perspectives from are kind of going to come together. They're going to meet in some way and they're going to have to fulfill some sort of mission. None of the characters have actually met yet. I'm kind of just waiting for that to happen. There have been big moments, like big things have happened in each character's story, but I'm just kind of waiting for like them to meet and this big like mission to be revealed, basically. I have a lot of theories about what's happening. Obviously, I'm not going to say them just in case they're spoiler. I think probably the most exciting and personally my favorite character story to follow is Kaladin. His is probably the most exciting and the most like action-packed. I'm also really interested in Dalinar's story. Dalinar is also one of my favorite characters, actually, and so is, I think her name is Navani. I think that's her name, but we haven't seen much of Navani. I hope she shows up a little bit more because she's just kind of like a strong like female character, and I really like seeing that in fantasy. Hoping we get to see more of her in the future. I'm hoping to finish that off shortly. So that's all that I have for this vlog. Thank you so much for watching if you've watched up until this point. Please make sure to like and subscribe.